Hey folks, welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. I'm Tim. This is Kimberly. And I have a question for you, Kimberly.
Yep.
You ready?
What you got for me,
It's going to
Tim?
be a hard one. Are you optimistic or pessimistic? I'll sit back.
Anybody who watches this show knows I lean.
You're a pessimist.
I lean towards being optimistic.
Would you say I'm an optimist? Be careful what you say. Or a pessimist?
Well, if there's only two, I would choose you're a realist.
Realist.
However,
Very
I do a
diplomatic.
realist with a
Well
lean
played.
towards pessimism. And that might be because
I
you
like
are.
to think of it as analytical.
Well, I was going to say that might be because you're analytical and also you're very, you like to know all the facts. But you don't naturally lean like everything's going to work out fine.
Yeah. What would you give as a definition for optimism? What would you say optimism is?
I think it is, simply put, just expecting that something positive is going to come out of a situation. Yeah.
The glass is half full
Right.
versus
And
a
now
pessimist.
that's not coming from someone who's had the perfect life. I've had the beat down
Yeah.
since leaving my home at a young age. That began years ago. As far as circumstances, difficult circumstances, not nearly as difficult as so many others. So let me put that in perspective.
We've had some setbacks.
We've had some big
in our life.
setbacks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Divorce.
But not in our life, but in our lifetime.
Health
yes.
issues.
Yes.
We've had some tough
But
times.
you've remained resilient.
I
which
have,
is
but my
very good.
resilience doesn't come from a false hope. It comes from actually having experienced God's grace
Your
and
faith.
in my faith. Yeah, through it all.
So, I've referred to you sometimes as
Pollyanna, yes.
Yeah.
A little
Which-
annoying that you say that.
Yeah, I know, and I'm trying not to say it anymore.
Because it sounds very like she's dumb, cute, and always
Oh, wow,
fun to be
no.
around.
No.
But no, you know what I mean. Like
Yeah,
it
fun to
feels.
be around is
Pollyanna is almost like it's like a sarcastic way of saying you're positive. Like, oh yeah, she basically lives in a bubble, is what that sounds like.
Well,
To the actual optimist, that's what it sounds like.
the actual Pollyanna was a girl who, always played this game with her father. Her father passed. She was in a orphanage, as everybody knows, and anyway,
No, everybody doesn't know that. I've never heard this story before.
Yeah, and so she played this game, and this game was to really try to see the best out of life.
Yeah.
And she played that on a regular basis. It drove everybody crazy, but she was very optimistic. It's actually a good thing. Pollyanna syndrome is where you're unrealistic in your view of the
exactly.
future.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's you at all. But when we talk about optimism versus pessimism, the glass half empty, half full, well, a real pessimist doesn't say it's just half empty. He will say, or she will say, it's not only half empty, but the glass is filthy and it's filled with toxins and germs that are going to affect you negatively, and you probably could die
And
of
probably
some
a
disease.
piece of glass in there.
A shard of glass. Optimism is things are going to work out. Pessimism is things are never going to work out.
Yeah.
So those are the extremes. But optimism, we want to talk about optimism from a biblical perspective. And then we're going to talk about how that applies to relationships. So optimism in a biblical sense is not fragile, where things must turn out well.
Right.
So if you're optimistic and things don't turn out well, after a while you lose your belief that things are going to turn out well. Biblical optimism is an optimism that persists no matter how things work out, and when things happen that are not like you expected, you accept it.
Right.
So-
right. It's all in how you see it, how you frame it, that, and seeing God's hand even in the dark times, his care, his hand, his protection, all of that.
We talked about this, and we talked about this in preparation for this podcast, and we were talking about the fact that optimism, biblical optimism, looks like and maybe is best defined by the word contentment.
That's so good. Yeah.
And so instead of optimism, which almost demands that things turn out well, or I have to make it seem like it turned out well, even if it didn't. Contentment says it didn't turn out well, but I'm okay.
Right.
Because I trust God for that.
Yes.
So we came up with some scriptures. I don't know if you want
Yeah,
to
this is
read
a
them.
really good one.
Yeah.
Philippians 4:8 says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things." What I love about that is that can be applied to any circumstance that is going sideways in your life. If you find something that's true about it, something that's honorable, or something that's just or pure in the process, lovely, something that's commendable, or anything about it that's positive, you focus on these things. Think about those things instead of focusing on what's going
That's
wrong.
hard to do.
It
for
is. It's a
pessimist.
choice. It's a choice.
Somebody that leans pessimistic, or we'll try to clean it up and call it analytical. It's really hard to focus on the positive things because we're so focused on, how things could go wrong. If a real pessimist would look at the, several thousand years, I'm kind of a young earther, but let's say several thousand years of this Earth's existence and the solar system. And you say, well, it's been functioning this way, protected and so forth. And the sun is in its place. The moon is in its place. The earth rotation is exact. The pessimist would say, well, it can't last. It's got to all fall apart. The moon is going to blow up, or, meteors are going to hit us, and like God doesn't exist. But a person who's content, when God does judge, you accept it as God's will. So it's very important. But focus on the positive things. And then in Philippians 4:11 through 13.
"Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I've learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me." So there again, it's just about that contentment in when you have a lot and when you have little.
Yeah. The key to learning to live with much, or learning to live with very little, is that that you can have contentment through Christ who strengthens you. That's what he's saying.
Right.
He's not talking about you can accomplish great things through
Right,
Christ.
the stuff.
The context is real clear
Yeah.
that he will give you, through Christ, you will have the spiritual and mental discipline to be able to accept whatever comes your way, low or high, difficult or easy. You accept it from God. So let's relate this to marriage and
Relationships.
Yeah, relationships in general. So we wrote down several things that I think are really important to keep in mind, and they are these. Number one, you don't focus on minor flaws. When you are optimistic or when you have contentment, you don't focus on minor things. Just today, there were some minor things. They weren't major. They were minor. I remind you, Kimberly, they were minor, little missteps. And, if you push too hard on the minor things, then what happens when things are major, a real big issue?
Yeah.
You almost
Like
have lost
crying
your
wolf.
credibility.
Yeah, if everything's a big deal, then you basically get tuned out at some point.
You can only go to it's true with your children too, by the way. If you discipline your child for being childish, you're going to lose credibility because children will always be childish.
Yeah.
In fact, if they're not, then you're going to have weird kids.
Yeah, that's true.
They need to be normal. But the result of that is that you have confidence in your relationship. If I, get upset at Kimberly about little things, she's not going to trust me when a big thing happens.
Yeah.
So what's number two? Or do you want to say something?
Yeah, number two. No, I was going to develop that a little bit more, but we got a lot of points here. So it's important for you to take responsibility for your own happiness. So your spouse, we can create for each other an environment for our happiness, which is very helpful.
Yep.
But you will never be happy unless you are actually content. I want to say to the first, though, that so many of you, depending on who you are on the Enneagram or just what your love language is or whatever, you can spend your whole life trying to set the atmosphere for happiness for the people you love the most or even in your work environment. And you will kill yourself trying, and you won't ever really have the power to make them choose to be optimistic or to see the glass half full or to, choose happiness. At the end of the day, I would not encourage you to stop setting that environment. I think that's important.
Absolutely.
And it's so valuable for you to know that you have done your part. But if at that point, when you have no control over the other person and they still choose not to be, you choose your own happiness. You stay in that place of positivity and gratefulness. If sometimes it means removing yourself from the situation to be able to not feel like you're being pulled down, but you can't take responsibility for that other person, and them choosing happiness or contentment as well.
Yeah, that's good. I think a lot of people don't want to separate themselves from somebody who's creating a negative environment. Kimberly has enough confidence to say, okay, I can see where we are right now. This is not healthy for us to talk about that. It's too emotional.
Yeah.
And so let's just not talk about it now, and we'll come back and talk
Circle
about
back
it when you're not being an idiot.
I'm going
She
to the
doesn't
beach.
say it, but I
I'm
knew
going to
what
go
you
walk
meant.
the beach. I'm going to circle back.
Yeah.
Have a
and-
little talk with Jesus.
Right. Number 3, you don't need someone else
Yeah.
to fulfill you. When you come to that conclusion, think about that. When you come to that conclusion, you do not need anyone else other than God to fulfill you. You can focus on your marriage and not long for someone or something else.
Right.
You can be satisfied in a marriage that is not 100%. And by the way,
Most aren't.
I don't think
100%.
any are.
Yeah.
And I don't, ours is 98.9.
Today.
Today, not really today, but yesterday. It was pretty good yesterday because
Yep.
I was gone all day. But anyway, the point being that, in fact, when you need someone to perform
Right.
in order to fulfill
Keep you contented. Right.
yeah, you put them in a place that is too much for them.
Unreal expectation.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it does damage the relationship. So you're always going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And you're always going to lack satisfaction.
Right.
You need to get to this place where you say, I don't need anyone else to fulfill me. Now, it's important to need your spouse for that connection and so forth. But if I need Kimberly to be everything to me, God is not going to be everything. And then that puts a lot of demand on
I'm just going to rephrase what you said because I think it's important. It's important to find connection in your spouse, not to need connection in your spouse.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference. I think that
Better said,
we
and that's
both-
where you get the big bucks.
I think it's valuable that we find that it's important. It's a high value for us to find connection in our spouse. And I think it's God's plan for us, but we shouldn't have that constant needing of more connection of our spouse. So because we should find that first in ourselves and in the Lord. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Number 4, when things are difficult, optimism or contentment gives you resilience. In other words, like we talked about, divorce happens in marriages where commitment is low, and low commitment is related to low contentment. So when you lean towards optimism, it actually creates a higher level of resilience in your life for when, not if, but when the storms blow.
We did a study on divorce rates, and a little country in Central America is one of the poorer countries in Central America. It might be the poorest, actually, and that's Guatemala. And we've been there together, and I've been there without you. You've been without me. We've had missions down there and so forth. We love the work that's going on there, and so we've been somewhat involved. But I found out that in Guatemala, which has a high rate of poverty and one of the lowest rates of divorce. Did you know that?
No.
And the U.S. has the highest rate of wealth and the highest rate of divorce.
Yeah.
So here's what that says. Contentment is not connected to what you have.
Exactly.
Contentment is based on accepting what you have, not needing a certain standard to be content. So how much do you need? We know we were in a small little village called Buenos Aires in Zacapa, Guatemala, and we were in this little village, and we did a survey, a census actually, and Kimberly and I and a team went around. We filmed this and asking them, about their jobs, about their family health,
origin,
health concerns, so forth. We stopped and prayed with each one, but every house we went to, not everyone, but at
Large
least
majority.
90%, really 90% were dirt floors. The life expectancy, the life expectancy of a 5-year-old and the mortality rate of 5 years old and younger is really incredibly high. They usually can't make it that far. And it's because of those illnesses that their little bodies can't fight off. And
Life expectancy is low, not high.
Yeah, mortality rate is high.
Right.
Life expectancy is low. I may have said that backwards, but you get the point. The point is that they're living in poverty. They have all of the fallout of poverty, not great food, not a great amount of
clean water.
But fortunately, we were able to bring a clean well to them, a well that got them clean water for the first time ever in this community. But all of these factors lead to death, and yet their divorce rates are very low. And so what that tells me is when things are difficult, contentment gives you resilience. So if you can be content with what you have and not demand more, you will be much happier in your relationships. And just a few thoughts about why optimism or contentment is good for relationships.
Yeah.
Number one.
So when optimism and contentment is in your relationship, you know things will be manageable when difficulties happen.
Right.
So you have an outlook that's naturally positive, that no matter what happens, we're going to be okay.
Yeah, and we've gone through some stuff that we've said, illnesses and some setbacks financially.
Yep.
I mean, I hate even saying that because people have had it worse, and people have had it worse with medical.
It's all relative, though.
It is all relative.
It feels deeply to anybody who's going through whatever they consider to be a crisis. You feel it deeply. But when you've gone through enough of them and you do it with contentment and resilience, you almost you're so much better and more prepared the next time you see something coming down the pike, because it will.
And I love the way Larry Crabb, the Christian psychologist, wrote in his book Inside Out, when you have a life that is committed to eternity with Christ, it makes life today manageable. And remember that. You're not living for today. You're living for heaven. You're living in today, but you're living for eternity.
Right.
Number two, you are not looking for a better spouse. When you have contentment and a relationship that is where both people have contentment, you're not looking for a better spouse.
An upgrade.
Yeah, we were watching this show. I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but we were watching this show that it's a bachelor show without getting into what it was. We're watching his bachelor, and it's a comparison thing, I'll say what it was. It was the Golden Bachelor.
Oh yeah,
and in
such
the Golden
a good
Bachelor, it's okay. Anyway, I'm watching it with my wife and my youngest daughter.
Yeah,
thank you for saying that. That
true.
My man card is gone. But anyway, we're
you just
watching
got 20,000 new female followers on Hope Rescue.
And he's trying to figure out by comparison. When I met Kimberly, I thought she checks all the boxes, And
Let's just sign it, sell it, bag it, take it home.
I shot that and took it home. Anyway, so you're not looking for anything else.
Right.
And you're satisfied and
Right.
content with what God has provided for you.
Right. And I think, just to be honest, that's so common in our society, is to look for a better option. And it doesn't take long in so many of those scenarios for them to choose something that's sparkly, male or female, and then within a certain amount of time that plays out and they become a real person with real struggles too. And as we know, statistically, second and third marriages are more doomed than the first, according to statistics. So it's not a fix. And so having a heart of contentment to say, Lord, like, this is the person that you've chosen for me. Let's make this work.
Yeah.
Find the good things, the praiseworthy things, like that passage talks about,
yeah.
those things to be able to be grateful for. And number 3 is you're safe in the contentment of your partner.
Yeah. I really feel safe
I do
in
too.
Kimberly's love for me
Yeah.
and her contentment with me. I feel that with our kids.
Yes.
I feel it with many of our friends, our closest friends. There is a beauty in that you have somebody that is committed and contented with you. And number 4, you have the freedom to succeed and fail without the fear of divorce.
Right.
I've listened to so many couples threaten divorce. You need to stop that. If long before divorce might happen, it would have to be that you have tried everything. Don't threaten divorce. What you should do is say, hey, look, we have an issue. We need to get some counseling, or we need to set down our non-negotiables, and we need to try on our own. If that doesn't work, then we'll get counseling, whatever it is. But don't start with, I don't like what you did, I want to divorce.
I'm leaving you.
Or I'm getting, if this happens again, I'm divorcing you. That is not a healthy, fear-based relationship, is not going to work.
Right.
Contentment is key.
And number 5, our final 5, you have the ability to be honest and express your greatest struggles. So being content in a relationship is that freedom to be able to feel like you can be completely honest with your spouse and be able to share your struggles without that fear of, all of the above.
Yeah. And this doesn't mean that you say everything that comes to your mind, but in fact,
acknowledging the
a
facts.
struggle you're having, you can express that because you have someone in your life who is committed to you for the rest of their life.
Right.
And that is powerful. In fact, I say it in weddings when I perform weddings, which I don't do very often anymore, but I used to do them a lot. And I would say to most couples, you have someone who's committed to you for the rest of your life. And all you got to do is look down at that ring on your finger and know that. And that's an important reality.
Yeah,
you have somebody who's committed to you. So how does commitment play out in relationships? It is essential. And as we go through these, this was number 5. And we have 5 more that we want to share with you. And I believe that when we finish this, it's going to help your relationships. If you need to go back and listen to the first 4, certainly do that. Invite a friend to listen to Hope Rescue Podcast. They are on our website. These are archived, hoperescuepodcast.org. Go there and invite your friends to go there and learn and listen. And we appreciate your input. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.